This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio is brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. JMB Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Silver Wax, absolute care for everything you drive. Thank you. Lovely to be with you today because, Dean, we should have been playing the music. I was just thinking about this. Just the two of us.
I didn't line that up.
Who did that? Who did that song?
That is out of my
Just the two of us.
I don't know that one.
No Pete Bowman today. No Nikki V today. Just you and moi, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
How lovely is that?
Oh, my.
Do we know what happened to everybody? It was just one of those weird...
I think we're off the road. Everyone's on vacation. They're taking the winter off.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. One day when I grow up, I want to do the same, Dean. Just so you know. Wonderful podcast, nonetheless, even though we're not fully equipped with our A-team, apparently. I may have an argument about that. But, we do have a wonderful show. Several months ago, we had a guest on the show here that I had met at a function at the Franklin Fishing Club. And his name was Rob, and he was with the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. And we were having lunch, and one thing led to another. And he told me about this guy that he has within his organization that is a bit of a goby geek, he called him. He's a scientist that studies gobies, especially on the Lake Simcoe watershed. And I immediately thought, man, I got to talk to this guy. So we have him coming on to the show a little later on. His name is Rob Wilson. He's an aquatic ecologist at the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and he's been there since 2002, and his whole job there is to study gobies. And what a wonderful thing to be studying, seeing as it's probably one of the most mimicked baits and lures on the planet, because everything in freshwater that's got gobies in it are chowing down on them big time. So we thought, hey, what an interesting subject to have on the show. Maybe it'll help our fishing. Who knows? Do you spend a lot of time fishing gobies at all, Dean?
I was on Lake Simcoe 2 days ago.
And?
A lot of small perch, nothing that exciting. I was more out scouting because I was hoping to take a buddy out there in a few weeks, but I don't know if I'll be back in Lake Simcoe this fall or not.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I was hoping to just do a bunch of perch stuff, but I'm thinking I'm going to take advantage of the walleye at the end of the season.
Wow.
So, yeah, I wasn't inspired, but I've heard amazing things. It was probably me.
Oh. Well, it could be listen, sometimes when we have short windows, small windows of opportunity, and we make judgments based on those small windows, sometimes we really shoot ourselves in the foot.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, because to me, if you're going to be anywhere perch fishing early or late in the season, it would be Lake Simcoe.
Oh, for sure. Right? It's just a place I haven't spent enough time in the open water. I ice fish there all the time. And I just, the guy I'm taking out actually next week, I don't think he's ever been out on the water with me.
Oh, wow.
So I don't want to go try to explore a lake, and especially a big water like that.
You don't want to ruin his perception of the magnificent Dean Taylor.
Exactly. I have a reputation to maintain, so I need to, yeah.
Same reason I don't fish with anybody, too.
Yeah.
I figure, you know what? Why ruin it for them?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So anyways, yeah. We'll have him on the program here shortly and tell us all about everything we need to know about gobies we're afraid to ask. Well, we're going to ask today. Listener feedback today comes from Toronto_James via YouTube. This is not a question, I take it? No?
This is not a question. This was in response to our grass carp episode, which I think we should probably sponsor it. We should probably sponsor the segment by the Invasive Species Center.
I think, why don't we? Why don't we make this listener feedback brought to you by the Invasive Species Center?
Sounds great.
Because I think that's a wonder. Did you come up with that just like now? Just like
I
boom?
thought of that just out of the top of my head.
Wow.
Yeah. It just came to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible because it has something to do with the invasive species and or carp in general. Because Toronto_James via YouTube says, in response to our grass carp episode, he's talking about the podcast, obviously, right?
Yeah.
He says, I have caught many grass carp in Europe over the years. The best method was to catch them off the surface because we have said on numerous occasions, I wonder if you could actually go out and fish for them rather than just try and run into them by chance and hope that one of them is floating on the surface and you can call M&R and invasive species and get them over there and all that. Much like somebody did recently, obviously. But we often say, I wonder if you can actually fish for them, because if you could, it'd be kind of cool to go out and actually target an invasive species. It'd be very cool. But we also often said, they probably don't because they're aquatic plant eaters. Why would they hit a bait? Well, this is interesting because James goes on to say, the best method was to catch them off the surface using bread, dog kibble, or sugar puffs. Wow.
I wonder why they're eating that stuff. It must just be like sugar and like they just can't help it because they're vegetarians completely. I thought.
Well, yeah, but if they're in shallow water and this stuff is on the surface oozing its essence, and these things probably spend a lot of their day following scents of various plants and vegetation, right? I would think. I would think they're probably very, very sensitive to smells and tastes that are floating in the water. That'd be interesting. Anyways, he says, get them feeding on a few free offerings and then present your baited. Oh, I see, hook near. So what he's doing is kind of chumming the area with either kibbles or sugar puffs or just bread.
There's a name for that in carp fishing, isn't there? When you go out a few.
Yeah.
Because they go out for like a week ahead of time, right?
Chum. I think you're chumming. It's chumming, isn't it?
I think they have a more proper English name for it. I can't think of what it is, though.
Oh, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
Because I should know. I've used that word a million times.
And you were over there.
Baiting. No.
There's something.
Oh, please, if anybody knows, write in immediately and put me at ease because this is painful right now. Anyways, he goes on to say that once you've fed the area with some freebies, then present one that's actually baited with a hook. Once they take the bait, wait for them to close their mouths and turn away before striking. Otherwise, you'll pull the bait right out of their mouths. You can catch them off of the bottom using normal carping tactics with corn or maize. That's interesting. Okay. That's interesting. He goes on to say, I've only ever seen one on the water here in Canada, which was immediately reported to M&R, and I don't believe it was ever captured. So he has seen one or knows of one that was seen, and it was reported. He says 34 fish in 13 years is very interesting. I believe that DNA testing can show their sources. So would love to know where the diploid fish were from, whether they were truly wild or were stocked from a fish market, which I believe is most likely. There are quite a lot of lakes in the UK with grass carp in, and I don't think I have ever seen or heard of a water where they have successfully bred, which is encouraging. That's interesting. So even in the UK, they're not successfully breeding.
Yeah, that's weird, eh?
That is very weird. This is a great listener feedback, by the way. We should give him something for this.
Yeah.
Well, he put a lot of time. He goes on to say, read the comments of diploid versus triploids. Check out the Fender Fish Hatchery. Fender Fish Hatchery.
And maybe we'll have to have them on.
Maybe we should, eh? Mm-hmm. Fender Fish Hatchery channel, as they have a great video on this. Okay. We definitely have to have them on.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for that. That is, I don't know. I feel terrible not
you
giving
have the
him
power.
Well, I know, but you know what happens when I go off the beaten path, right?
Yeah.
I like it at that moment. I think I'm a hero and it feels real good. But I got to tell you, the beating that I take afterwards precludes me from doing it on a more regular basis.
Well, then I think he should write in next week with a question. And,
All right.
And I'll keep an eye out for it.
And as soon as he writes in, Toronto_James via YouTube, as soon as you write in again, a one-liner, doesn't have to be this detailed. This is wonderful, though. We appreciate that. Just to make it a question.
Yeah.
So that we can bestow a gift upon you. And Dean, the gifting machine, is going to keep an eye out for you.
Yeah, I sure will.
There you go. Thank you very much. We did that already. Brought to you by Invasive Species Center. The news, my friends, brought to you by J&B, your outdoor superstore. J&B Cycle and Marine, Ontario's largest Princecraft Mercury boat package on the dealership on the planet since 1970. Nobody has disputed it. So I'm spreading it now. I'm going to say it's a planetary thing. Okay? And if nobody complains about that, I'm going universe, just so you know. Largest Mercury Princecraft dealer on the planet. Now.
I'm actually surprised we haven't had anyone write in about that. Someone in like Princeville or somewhere around there would have to be putting up some sort of fight, you'd think.
I would think.
But
or maybe they don't give a rat's ass.
no, maybe not.
Right? Because if they're going to dispute it, it means they're larger than J&B Cycle and Marine, the world's largest Princecraft Mercury dealer. And if they're larger than them, they're making so much damn money. What do they care about a little podcast like this? They're going to dispute it. No, they're not going to. They're in the Bahamas somewhere vacationing. That's why they haven't disputed it. Anyways, from outboard motors to fully equipped Princecraft fishing models to family fun-oriented Princecraft pontoon and deck boat deck boat packages. That is an experience in itself. If you've not seen one, you have to check them out. Just a wonderful, different platform than either a conventional boat hull or a pontoon. It's right in the middle. Performance of one, party time of another. Just called a deck boat. You can check them out at J&B. Anyways, go to jmbcycle.com and explore it for yourself and discover it. All you have to do is add love and joy and water. The rest comes from J&B Cycle and Marine. In the news, studies find that COVID, this I found interesting. Now, did you have anything to do with this story, Dean?
I had some influence on which story we picked. This seemed like the invasive species. We're talking a lot about them. I decided to put this one in there. But it just happened to be on my timeline, though.
It's genius. Yeah, it's just genius. That's the only way I can describe it. I mean, whatever it is they're paying you here, it's not enough.
I'll let them know.
You're wasting your talents, as far as I'm concerned. This is genius. Anyways, study finds that after COVID, the lamprey, which behooves me, but the lamprey population started to increase immediately, according to articles. During 2020 to 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted regular control efforts, lampricide treatments of streams, designed to suppress area from sea lamprey populations. So we weren't administering the lampricide treatment of streams, apparently, during COVID.
Yep.
We took it off. We just said, all right, you know what? You and your friend, we'll see you whenever we get back out of this.
Yeah.
In the meantime, all you lampreys, have at it.
Yeah, I think they underestimated how fast they could rebound, obviously, because they actually did this again. This is 2020 and 2021. But earlier this year, when the states were doing the government shutdowns and the cuts and everything, they did it again. They shut it down and stopped doing it. So.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. They call it a sea lamprey because it comes from the sea.
Yeah.
Right. We have as far as I knew, we have barriers in place at dams, etc., to stop the sea lamprey from coming up the St. Lawrence and into our waterways. Mm-hmm. We built them in the 60s and 70s.
Yep.
Do we shut them down during the pandemic? Or?
No, I think we're still dealing with our own population now. We're not really dealing with new ones, as far as I know. I think we're mostly just trying to manage the population we have.
Wow. It's increased in some cases tenfold.
Yeah.
The lamprey.
In Lake Ontario especially.
Wow. I thought we had it firmly under control.
Well, it's funny because we did a study, or we reported. I mean, that's a problem with all this data that takes like 5-6 years to analyze, because I think we reported like maybe 7 or 8 months ago that the situation was like firmly under control.
Yes.
But the data was probably from 2019. And then it says, actually in 2020, they increased by 10 times. And then for sure earlier this year, they increased again, because I know they took a bunch of months off.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so we're back to square one.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought we had licked it. Obviously not. Okay. Anyways, fascinating to read about it, because it does affect us every day as anglers in this part of the world. The lamprey affects us in ways that we can't even imagine. Check out the article. It's on fishingcanada.com as we speak. It's called Study Finds That COVID Allowed Lamprey to Regain Ground in the Great Lakes. Did you have anything to do with that title? That was very dramatic. I like that.
Yeah, that was me.
Wow. Look at you go, eh? Who'd have thunk it, eh, Dave?
No, I don't know. My mom, maybe.
Anyways, check it out, fishingcanada.com. Wonderful story. Fan question of the week brought to you by our good friends at fishfindermounts.com. That's fishfindermounts.com. Just the other day, Mr. Bowman and I were working on the Princecraft Fishing Canada boat that shot all of this season. By the way, that boat's going to be up for sale. Any of you out there that are interested in a bargain of a lifetime, you might want to get a hold of us at Fishing Canada. Every year we have, I would say, 5 or 6 folks who have been on the waiting list from year to year for our fishing boats. Once we're done with them, we use them from May till October-ish. And then once we're done with them, we just we put them up on the block, and somebody each year gets an early Christmas gift because of the amount of technology that we have on these boats. In a lot of cases, they are one of one. And this year's boat qualifies for that moniker because it truly is a one-on-one. It's the most well-equipped Princecraft Mercury package I have ever had the pleasure of fishing off of. And it'll be up for sale here in a matter of weeks. If you are interested in being one of those buyers, by all means, contact us in whatever way, shape, or form. But that's only valid if you're listening to this. When does this go out, Dean?
This goes out probably first week in November.
First week in November, might be a little, yeah. Try us. You never know. Hey, sometimes an early Christmas present, you never know where it comes out from. But anyways, I digressed in that area because I mentioned fishfindermounts.com, because the other day Pete and I were just cleaning up the boat rig and getting it ready for the sale. And we just both had nothing but good things to say about the way that we rigged this boat up, with all of the transducers mounted on both sides of the boat, facing forward and sideways and backward. I mean, it's just it looks like an Army vessel. Looks like a naval vessel. And thanks to the good people at fishfindermounts.com who makes deploying the transducers and other devices from our Garmin units possible. That are it. Fishing Canada salutes fishfindermounts.com for their wonderful work. All right. Fan question comes to us from James Maltby. Maltby via email. Is that kind of old school?
Yeah, I had to pull this back because we have a lot of people writing in on YouTube, but a lot of them are either asking questions that like are very similar to what we've had before, or they're people who have written in so many times and they are good ones. So we either have to start letting people win multiple times, or I'm digging back into emails that people have written in, because we still do get people email. I've just been prioritizing the YouTube side, so this is an older email, but I figured I'd mix it in.
How are we going to get a hold of the gentleman if it's an older email?
It's actually nice because I can just email him right back.
Oh,
yeah,
I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right, James Maltby, here we go, and I'm going to read the question, then I will determine whether this qualifies for the store manager's bonus.
Well, technically, the store manager has a rule that it has to be a YouTube comment. So James is out of the running.
Oh, right.
So this is just a donation he's making.
Oh, sorry, James, because I like the question, to be honest with you. But anyways, here we go. He says, hey, guys, you guys talk a lot about technology like LiveScope. But has there ever been a time in your career when a non-tech item has had this much impact on the way you fish? So, first of all, James, I think we need clarification. What does he mean by non-tech, Dean? We're going to get you to be the soothsayer. You're a little clairvoyant. You can kind of see through things. What does he mean by non-tech?
I was trying to think of the same because my mind went to like electric trolling motors, like your anchor mode and stuff like that. But I think that would be, to me, tech is anything electronic. But he may just be referring to like the higher tech, like we're talking LiveScope, where that is like, your classic like high tech item. I don't know if he's referring to baits or rods. I'm not really sure.
And I had the same feeling, right? So I wasn't sure which way to go on this. So I took it upon myself to kind of take anything prior to this sensational thing called LiveScope and forward-facing sonar. Anything prior to that, to me, is non-tech, because the tech involved in that is so out there that anything prior to that just looks old school. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
So I made a list of my top 6 items that I thought and still do think were a game changer, because that's what LiveScope is now, right? It's a game changer. If you're, to the point where tournaments and tournament directors and promoters are banning it in a lot of cases. It's that much of a game changer. They're banning it completely. So that blows my mind. But anyways, so I thought of, okay, what items have I grown up with in my lifetime as an angler that were game changers? And I've come up with the top 6 that I think were. Some of them proved to be game changers, and some of them were flops. So first on my list is, believe it or not, monofilament line.
And what era was that?
Well, I was a kid. I was like, it happened in my preteens, if I'm not mistaken. But I do remember it. I do remember using Dacron line, black Dacron line, all of my life as a kid. And then I remember this crazy clear line that looked ridiculous came into my world. And of course, then we started using it and found out all of the wonderful principles and qualities. And it became a real game changer for sure. Monofilament was maybe one of the first game changers that I can remember.
Okay.
And then, of course, it went on to improve itself, tenfold since. And today it's a staple. I still think it's a staple because some forms of angling cannot be done without it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So mono was number 1 on my list. Number 2 might be another shocker. Graphite rods. They completely changed the fishing landscape over about a 5-year period. And Today, still, it's a staple.
Yeah.
In the fishing rod business. So graphite rods would have the same kind of impact that LiveScope is having.
And that was the same where pretty much when they come out, everyone's making the transition. Like if you're not, you're left behind.
I remember the year that we discovered them. We discovered them. We didn't discover them, but first year that they sort of were available to normal human beings would have been in the late 70s. And I remember being at the Toronto Sportsman Show, and it was like somebody dropped a hand grenade in the show. All of a sudden, people were just a buzz for this stuff called graphite, and nobody could find it. Every booth you went into, hey, have you got any graphite rods? No. What's that? Hey, have you got it? No. Nobody had any, but we had heard about them, right? And then in 1980 was the real first time that anglers, the average angler, could even touch and feel one.
Yeah, that was like the composite hockey sticks for me because
same thing.
Yeah, like we were using wooden sticks until I was probably early teens, and then all of a sudden when they came out, like every single person within 1 year was. Like you just had to switch. You had no choice.
Otherwise, you weren't playing the game, right?
Yeah.
Well, this was the same in fishing. You know, if you were still holding on to a piece of fiberglass as a rod, man, you just weren't there. You weren't with it. And you know, much like we talk about forward-facing sonar today, right? How many times do we say it? If you're not using LiveScope or its equivalent, you're not fishing.
Yeah.
Well, that was true of graphite. Right? If you weren't fishing with a graphite rod, man, you just weren't fishing. And so that was number 2. Number 3, you mentioned them already, trolling motors.
Yep.
And not just when they evolved to be such a dynamic control unit, control meaning that, you know, you could actually use them to lock on a spot. But even before that, just to become to have a more stealthy presentation in water. The electric motor just opened the door for anglers big time. Changed the way we fish, completely changed it, and still to this day is a mainstay. So to me, that would be every bit as important as the forward-facing sonar of today. I haven't mentioned it because it is so similar, but I will also mention that, you know, the advent of graphs.
Yeah.
In the late 60s, early 70s was huge. First time ever that we had any inkling of what was happening below the waterline, right? So that had a major impact, especially on the Great Lakes fisheries, on the Pacific coast and East Coast fisheries, in ocean waters as well. Because it's the first time ever that we had eyes below the boat. And although it really didn't do a lot because it was post, you know, I remember those paper graphs with the little stylus that's coloring the thing. I remember using them in the Great Lakes in the late 70s. And how when you saw a fish, you thought you had just scored the biggest victory on the planet. Didn't matter whether you caught it or not. There it is. And you took home the paper evidence to show people. At the end of the day, you took home the roll and opened it out and said, look at the size of that. Did you catch it? No. Oh, okay. Well, what the hell, what good is it? So that was a big thing. So those are my 6. There were other things came along and went. I mentioned there was a lot of flops. The color selector was one that was earmarked to be a game changer, and it massive flop. There was another. I'll never forget this one. There was another handheld unit that measured the quality of the water. The amount of oxygen, the lack thereof, the acidity levels, like all of this stuff. And so you went into your favorite areas and drop the probe down, and it would say like, "Get out of here! There's no fish here." And you say, "Well, what do you mean? I just caught fish yesterday." And no, there's no fish there. So off you go. This was about a 2-year, 24-month cycle that everybody was using. I don't remember what it was called.
I could see people getting into that actually.
I don't remember what it was called, but everybody had one on their boat. And you'd see them all going, running to an area, stopping and getting the probe out, dropping it in the water, reeling it back up, and off they go someplace else.
I've never heard of that. That's awesome.
If I got to find out what it was called.
Yeah.
Color selector was kind of the same thing. What it did, if you're not familiar with it, it dropped a probe down in the water that you were intending to fish, and drop a probe down, and it could measure depths, not digitally, but it had little marks on the line, and you knew that at 10 feet, the meter would show the most vibrant color that the fish could see in that particular spot. And then you drop it down a little farther, and then that color would change, so you could pick colors that were more visible to a fish. We never asked any questions. Like, well, okay, what kind of water conditions did you test these fish in order to know that at 20 feet, fish, and by the way, what species were you using? Because I'm not fishing for bass, I'm fishing for walleye or perch or whatever. So there was Dr. Hill, Lauren Hill, was big in the scientific community back then. And he came up with the color selector. He also came up with another scent selector that was big for a little while. There was a lot of gadgets that came and went. For example, putting a box in your boat, which I think is still available today, that took all of the negative ions out of the boat, the sound, the vibration, and turned them into positive ions.
Is that what hydrowave is?
Well, no, that one's more, it makes the sound of a particular type of bait.
Okay.
The one you're talking about. No, what this thing did, or supposedly did, was to take the boat, it's running in neutral or whatever, and the vibration that it's giving out based on its dimension, engine, and just the configuration of the hull and any odd things about the combo, it gives out it gives out something. I can't remember whether they called it vibes or something, but it gives out something into the water. Well, if you put this box in play, it would make sure that whatever that was going out was cranked to the positive as opposed to the negative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because apparently some combos were negative.
I'm glad I didn't know about all this stuff. I would have been the guy buying it all.
That was me.
Yeah.
I had every single one of them. But yeah, so there was that. There was a ton of stuff. But once again, the ones that to me were game changers that are at the same level as today's technology, i.e. Forward-facing sonar, would be monofilament line, graphite rods, trolling motors, graphs. Those would be my top 4, I would say, right? In that order, as far as making a change or a contribution to the angling community. I think we pretty much beat that one to death. So James Maltby, unfortunately, if you would like, and that was a good question, but it wasn't a question. So, and it wasn't via YouTube.
Yeah.
So he had everything going for him except none of it.
Just the wrong place.
Let us know via YouTube. Write a question this time and the boys will look after you. This episode is brought to you by Sail. Sail is proudly Canadian and stocked with over 100 Canadian brands you know and love.
From rods and reels to sonars to kayaks and every last lure you've seen on the Fishing Canada show, Sail has all the gear to get you on the water.
Drop into one of 12 stores across Ontario and Quebec and talk to the real fishing specialists, or gear up online anytime at sail.ca.
Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures. We interrupt this program to bring you a message from Anglers Leaderboard, an AI-powered platform built for today's anglers. Use your phone and the photo measure board to automatically detect length and species, log catches, and track your stats over time. Whether you're fishing solo or joining a regional tournament, ALB helps you stay organized and competitive. Head over to anglersleaderboard.com to learn more and start using ALB today.
All right, the next segment brought to you by the good folks at Silver Wax, all Canadian wax company. As far as I know, maybe the only wax company. We'll take that anyways and put it out there. If anybody wants to dispute it, let me know. Silver Wax, since 1999, proudly Canadian. And let me tell you, folks, I use a lot of cleaning products for not only my boats, but my vehicles, my motorcycle. I'm one of those wax freaks. I have to have my vehicles shiny all the time. And I do have to tell you, since I made the switch to Silver Wax, because I'll be honest with you, it wasn't that long ago that I didn't even know it existed. And since the move, I would say I've probably saved myself 50% of my cleaning time, because this stuff is that good. Not to mention some of their other products like the bug remover, which we use a lot here at Fishing Canada, being on the road for as many miles each year as we are. Removing bugs from your grill becomes a major issue. Silver Wax has a solution for that too. Check them out. They're available at all fine and leading retailers, especially the one that it's Canadian and it sells tires. I know that. So you can get your Silver Wax there anytime. Now, on to the main section of the show. I first had an opportunity to hear about this gentleman. I'm going to say probably May of this year. I was fortunate enough to be invited to the Franklin Club to do a little fishing. And I met Rob Baldwin, who subsequently was a guest on this show a couple of months ago. And he told me of a gentleman that he worked with that he could write the encyclopedia on gobies, he said. So I'm fascinated by gobies, so why not have him on the program? Joining us now, Rob Wilson, aquatic ecologist at the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, and has been there since 2002. Welcome to the program, Rob.
Oh, thanks for having me on this morning. It's good to be here.
How does one become a goby guru?
Well, you kind of fall into it. You start off your life and you end up doing a bunch of work in fisheries, and then you move yourself to a place like Lake Simcoe, and somebody introduces them, and well, they fall in your lap.
Wow. And, what a great, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we looked at it as the end of the world as we knew it, from a fishing standpoint, because it was an invasive species. But man, oh man, what a great shot in the arm that has been to our freshwater fish. And that's why I want to talk to you about now, in particular, Lake Simcoe, which is your playground. That's where you do most of your work. Before we do that, tell us exactly what it is that you do. What is an aquatic ecologist?
Well, an aquatic ecologist, where we're at Lake Simcoe, is I get to go out in the field on a regular basis, and I get to do fish sampling. So what that is we kind of look like Ghostbusters. We have a backpack we put on our back. And it puts electricity into the water, and it stuns the fish, and we net them and ID them and put them back in the water. About 99% of them unharmed, and that tells us how healthy or unhealthy those streams are in the Lake Simcoe watershed by what those fish are in those streams.
Do you do the Holland River too?
We do parts of the Holland River, yep. We don't do the deeper parts, right? So it has to be parts you can wade in. So if you're a fly fisherman, right, you can only wade in as far as you can wade in, and kind of that's where we're limited, is to wadeable waters with our backpacks on.
The reason I mentioned that one, it's probably the least popular piece of water coming into Lake Simcoe, but to me, it used to be a largemouth bass haven that at the time, and I'm going back now to the mid-'70s, at the time, nobody even knew it existed. And yet it had largemouth bass galore. Obviously, things have changed there drastically in the years, but that's why I mentioned the Holland. Okay, so if you're electroshocking I guess all fish, or do you have targets? Do you go after particular fish at all?
We go for the ecology of the system, so it's a bit of everything. We want to see a bit of everything, and so we're looking at sort of lower trophic levels. So we're looking at the minnow species that eat the algae, and then the larger fish, the top predators. That tells us that system's got a complete ecosystem, right? So we're looking at those top level predators too.
And so, you can electric shock gobies?
Yep.
Wow.
They're an interesting one to catch because they don't have a swim bladder, right?
Right.
I don't know how familiar you are with fish biology, but they don't have a swim bladder, so they don't float to the surface. And when we're electrofishing, when fish get stunned, they turn upright and their swim bladder enacts and they float to the surface a little bit. So gobies don't, so we have to scoop them out from between the rocks usually in the streams that we get them in.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it takes some expert netter skills to get those out while we're working.
Tell the audience exactly or approximately when the gobies showed up in Lake Simcoe.
That was between 2004 and 2005. And we found them in the Pefferlaw River. If anyone's familiar with that area, it's the town of Pefferlaw, actually, on the east side of Lake Simcoe. That was the first place we found them in Lake Simcoe, unfortunately. And yeah, we found them then, and we worked with the Ministry of Natural Resources, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and ourselves to try to eradicate those I think it was the fall of 2005. And unfortunately, that obviously wasn't successful because we've got them all throughout the lake now.
I'm laughing because thank God you didn't eradicate them, but we do that quite often as fish managers, right? The first thing we look at when there's an invasive species that comes into the body of water is, okay, how are we going to get rid of it? And in some cases, this being a primary example, it's just not possible. It's just not possible to get rid of them. And then you say, whew, thank God that didn't work, because now, from what I understand, and that's why I wanted you on the show today, Rob, they become a very important part of the Lake Simcoe ecology, have they not?
They are. They've made themselves space in Lake Simcoe, in the food chain, definitely. And everything from diving birds to fish are now eating those gobies. And those gobies are eating algae, and they're eating other things in the lake and taking their space. So they've definitely cemented themselves in the food chain. Some things are really good about them, like the size of the bass in the lake. That's great for fishermen, right? Great for your viewers. And the whitefish and the trout that are eating them, that's great for those anglers that enjoy to catch those big monsters, right? So
and it doesn't hurt that they're, from what I can tell, they're a relatively easy meal for most predators. It's not a meal that they have to give up a lot of energy to get, right? Which is the bonus. Yeah,
and I think Rob Baldwin spoke to that in his interview with you. I think I saw a bit of it last week, and he was alluding to that there's low energy for the fish to expend to catch them because they're on the bottom and they're plentiful, right? They're everywhere, so they're easy to find and easy prey.
So, needless to say, they're off the most wanted list from your standpoint. Is there anything that we are doing to actually help them in that environment?
I don't think there's anything we are doing to help them. I mean, I think what we did to help them was introduce them to the lake, right, in the first place. And it is important that we don't introduce new species to ecosystems because they can be harmful, even though we might think they might be good for that ecosystem. If they aren't naturally there, then they can be harmful.
Yeah, we're looking now at the invasive species carp list with grass carp, which is a big concern of ours right now, as it should be for all folks living in this part of Ontario. But once again, I can't help but think back to those days when the goby was first on our radar screen, and it was the same thing. You know, oh my God, they're here. Zebra mussels, another classic example. Is there any correlation between the two, by the way? Not to get totally off topic, but the water clarity on Lake Simcoe has gone through the roof. I mean, you swear you're running it through one of those filtration systems that folks have at home. It's that clean and clear. Is there any correlation between that and the goby, or is it all the zebra mussel that has done that?
The zebra and the quagga mussel in Simcoe, which are they're cousins of each other, are the ones that have cleared up the water in Lake Simcoe for sure. Yeah,
because it's like beyond clear. It's just spooky how clear it is. Crazy.
It is, and that's one thing. I'll name drop my colleague Brian Ginn. He's the expert on the zebra quagga mussel and the clarity of Lake Simcoe.
Which makes it perfect conditions for you folks to work in, right? As far as what you do for a living, I would imagine a nice, clear environment to see would be perfect, as opposed to a cloudy, milky colored water, I would think.
It does make it interesting and easier for us to do our jobs. Unfortunately, my job is just in the rivers and streams and not so much in the lake itself. So it doesn't really affect what I'm doing. But for Brian, it does. And for our colleagues at Ministry of Natural Resources, they're the ones who do study the fish of Lake Simcoe themselves. So I'm sure that the clarity of the lake is good and bad for them. I've heard that it's some of their work that they've been doing. It's very interesting because they use these things called trap nets. And because of the clarity of the water, they're finding they can't catch as many fish because the fish can see the trap nets.
Okay. That makes sense.
It can be a little bit of both, right?
Yeah,
it can be
for
good
sure.
and bad.
Have you noted any serious negative effects of the goby on Lake Simcoe?
For sure we have. Definitely in the rivers and streams, we see they take up a niche in the streams of those bottom feeders, right? So the bottom feeding fish that we have in the streams, so things like mottled sculpin, our darter species, which are a part of the perch family. So the smaller perch that live on the bottom of the stream, those darters, the ones that are my favorite fish because they're the most beautiful and colorful, they take up those habitats, and they've taken those habitats from those fish. But we're starting to see an equalization now that Mother Nature's trying to figure it all out. And we're seeing that the gobies and the darters and the sculpin are all kind of living together at the bottom of the stream and taking their own space.
Yeah, nature has a way of doing that, doesn't it? It's almost like there's an unwritten rule book for all species. And
especially now with the top level predators, seeing them as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? You're seeing that's equalized the playing field a little bit.
We talked about its effect. The goby's effect on smallmouth. They've just, it's gone from a great smallmouth fishery to maybe one of the best ever of all time smallmouth fishery, and it's due to the goby for sure. How's it done for species like lake trout, for example? Are they picking up on it as well?
That's my understanding. My colleagues at M&R have been doing the studies on that one, and they have been seeing in the bellies of those trout, they've been seeing gobies as well. So it is. Unfortunately, the dissolved oxygen and the temperatures in the lake are what's the limiting factor for the trout, right? They need to find those deep cold spots in the wintertime, and the oxygen can be pretty low in some of those areas. So the gobies can make it better for the trout, but the temperatures and the dissolved oxygen in the bottom of the lake are the limiting factor for them.
This episode is brought to you by Angler's Leaderboard and its photo measure feature. Angler's Leaderboard makes every catch count by integrating seamlessly with their patent-pending AI-enabled fish measurement board. Now you can automatically measure catch length and detect species in seconds just by using your smartphone camera. It's fast, accurate, and reduces handling. So now you can release healthier fish and keep fishing for the big ones. Learn more at anglersleaderboard.com.
Rob, it just dawned on me, how many of the tributaries, the rivers that you work and your team work on, how many of those are flowing out of Lake Simcoe as opposed to flowing in? Is it an equal number, or are we?
No, so everything we're studying is flowing in, and Lake Simcoe flows out through the Atherley Narrows and into Couchiching, and that's where our jurisdiction stops. Our jurisdiction stops at the Atherley Narrows, and Couchiching Conservancy takes over from there. So yeah, we're just looking at all the streams and rivers that flow into the lake.
So safe to assume, now that you mentioned that the Goby has moved well past Simcoe, well past Couch, up into Sparrow, and et cetera, et cetera?
I'm not sure about Sparrow, but definitely in Couch.
In Couch. Well, then Sparrow's not that far down the road, which means ultimately our entire freshwater system in time will have Goby as one of its probably most nutritious morsels for game fish to feed on.
Yeah. So, and any of those areas that are connected, they definitely can move into. And that's what we've seen in our tributaries. We've seen them move up almost all of our tributaries that don't have a dam at the outlet of them.
Right.
Right. So any of the ones that have dams, they're not good at jumping up dams. They're not good at jumping up like trout. So they can't get over those dams. So that's preventing them from getting into some of our water courses, which that's about the only benefit of dams, in my opinion.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This was originally, I think, anyways, was it not originally a saltwater fish?
No, it's freshwater fish.
It is.
It can be brackish water, right?
Okay.
So it can take on some of the salt water as well. But yeah, and it's a bit of both.
From the Mediterranean?
It is from the Mediterranean, yeah, the Caspian Sea area.
Sea, and brought over by ships and their ballast before the ballasts were outlawed to be dumped into our waterways. This is the way most, including zebra mussels, most of them made their way through ballast water that was carried up to St. Lawrence, and then once in the Great Lakes, the ballast water would be dumped, and et cetera, et cetera. It always amazes me how that can even happen, that these fish are so resilient that they can live in the bowels of a big freighter going across the ocean for God knows how long.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they've done so well in our waters, right? They're resilient to temperature changes. They're resilient to food sources, to predators, a bit of everything. So
all right. Let's talk business now. This is why I got you on here. I need to talk the fishing business now. Since Goby have become a mainstay in our waterways, I think pretty much every company that manufactures lures, both soft and hard lures, have tried to imitate the Goby because it's become such a major part of the food chain in the Great Lakes. And they've all had their shot and versions and colors and shapes and sizes. What do you think is the most important characteristic of a Goby that separates it from all of the other tiny little, call them food fish for the lack of a better term? What do you think, if you were a lure manufacturer, what key component of a Goby would you key in on?
I think it is just the look of them. It is, they have a very specific look to them. Right. And that look, there's only one other fish that kind of looks like them, and people confuse them with the sculpin.
Yeah.
And I think because of the way they look and just where they are, in the lakes, they're on the bottom of the stream, of the bottom of the lake, that they're easy prey, and they can spot them from a mile away because they're just sitting on the bottom of the lake, chilling out. Right. Now,
we've seen images. I'm sure everybody watching this at one time or other has seen those wonderful underwater images of gobies. I've seen, and we've been part of capturing images of a lake bottom with what appears to be thousands of gobies darting around, and the predator fish are just kind of down there with them, not really paying any attention to them. Is this a common sight, or is this because maybe the images that we've seen just happen to be at the tail end of a big feeding spree for those predators who are just hunkered down there with them?
I think it's like every other animal in the world. Once your belly's full of something, you don't want to go back to the buffet for more, right? So
yeah.
And I think that's all it is. And I think there's just so many of the gobies around that they just get full easily, and you don't see them do it. They're just hanging out, watching them until they get hungry.
And like I say, they don't have to use up a lot of energy to consume them. They're just there, right? And they're just, and they don't swim. It's not like they can swim away from a predator. It just basically has that hopping movement that, makes it a really easy, inexpensive lunch in terms of energy consumption.
For sure.
So having said all of that now, to me, the reason I asked you that question, to me, the most important thing, the shape, obviously, because it's kind of different. It has a larger front end than the back end. Most other game fish are slender and or cylindrical and streamlined. This critter's not. To me, the most interesting part of a goby, if I was a lure manufacturer, I think would be the way it moves would be really important. And I don't think anybody's quite gotten that down yet. No. What do you think?
I think, you have to try to, as a fisherman and as the manufacturer, you've got to try to imitate the movements of those animals the best you can to make it look like that. So like that hopping motion, like them moving across the bottom, that's important to try to imitate in some fashion or another, whether that's having the belly of that lure a little more weighted than the top, and just the way where that weight is balanced in the fish. Bingo. In the lure to make it more natural.
Yeah, and also a lot of us that are jigging with goby imitation don't quite understand that when they move, they're not just moving vertically, they're moving mostly horizontally because they're going from point A to point B. If you're sitting in a spot just jigging a goby type bait, it's not really looking like a goby, right? It's got to move forward at the same time that it's lifting up off the bottom. And that's the difficult part. And the guys who have got that presentation down pat, like on Lake Simcoe, I know a couple that do. Oh my God. It's like every gigantic smallmouth within 100 yards just comes flocking in to these guys because they've got that movement. Yes, they've got the color. And speaking of color, have you noticed a color change in the goby depending on where it is and what it's doing?
For sure. Like all fish, depending on what habitat they're in, they sort of take on those types of habitats, right? So in a clear stream with a light bottom, you'll find the goby to be more light colored. And in a somewhere on a darker bottom, so where it's just like a muck bottom or something like that, they'll be a darker color.
Okay, so they are like a chameleon type. Okay, which most fish are.
So, and we find that when we're fishing in the different rivers and streams that we're in, we find that some streams have darker versions of them, and they look more kind of sculpinish. And there's other streams that are very light color, and they don't look anything like a sculpin when you first look at them.
There's two thoughts to that for me. I've always made a bit of an argument for that kind of thinking where, the famous term in fly fishing was, match the hatch, right? Yep. And for most of my fishing life, I've adhered to those principles. But every once in a while, the rebel in me jumps out and says, well, wait a minute, hold it. By matching the hatch, because most fish or prey are chameleon in that they can change their look to match their background. Yep. And if I'm emulating that, I'm kind of concealing myself from the prey. So wouldn't it make sense that I go the opposite and, change it up big time because I'm going to be very visible while all the other, in this case, bait fish or gobies are camouflaged with the bottom. I want to be different. Any thoughts to that at all? Is that, or am I crazy?
It's a good theory. We should test that scientifically.
Well, I would love to. I think that would be. I think that would be great. But then I think, well, maybe I haven't just invented bread or anything, because that's why all these manufacturers of baits come up with these wild and crazy colors and the vast array of colors, probably for that reason, right?
Well, and why wouldn't you want more in your tackle box? Right? You want to spend more of your hard-earned cash on different colored gobies and different colored minnows.
Exactly. If you didn't do that, what are you going to do with your money, right? It's perfectly matched. I love it.
Yeah.
What's the future of the goby, in your opinion?
Well, they're here to stay. We've gone far past the point of trying to get rid of them out of our systems, that they have them in them, right? So if they're new to a system, it's worth trying to eradicate them, right? So if they got into a lake that they hadn't been in before, like say a Kawartha Lake or a Halliburton Lake, that it's worth trying to do those eradications where we can. But in the Lake Simcoe system, they're definitely here to stay, and they're beyond the point. We learned very quickly that they got beyond the point of getting rid of them early on when they arrived.
It's interesting to hear a scientist say that. And what I mean is, here you are in probably the best case study that we've got on the curve of the goby since it was inadvertently introduced into this part of the world. And we probably got the most data available of all areas as to the way it has been brought into the ecosystem by nature and now plays such an important role. I think right now, if you wanted to hurt, I can only attest to smallmouth bass, but if you wanted to hurt the smallmouth bass population in Lake Simcoe, get rid of the goby, I think, personally. So you as a scientist seeing that, I would think that at some point you guys have got to all get together and say, it wasn't the perfect storm when it first got here, but we now have data to substantiate the fact that, maybe we were worried about nothing, and maybe we need to spend our efforts in a different direction, because it is here, as you said, on Lake Simcoe for sure. It is here, and we're finding out that the sky is not falling when it, in fact, comes into our waterways. Then maybe we shouldn't be looking at it as such a big negative. Or is that not even a viable talking point in the scientific community?
It can be a viable talking point, but there's still, the science is still out on what other fish it has affected. Like,
okay,
we see the benefits of obviously top level predators like the bass and the pike. Obviously, they're going to take those chances with the gobies and improve their numbers, right? But there's the other species in the lake, like I said, the other bottom feeders that have definitely taken a hit, and we haven't seen them come back to original numbers. They're in those streams with the gobies, sharing space with them, but we haven't seen them come back to their original numbers. And one of the ones, I don't know how many of your viewers are sucker fishermen, but the suckers we're finding, and we're not sure why they're not coming back in the numbers, if it's the gobies or it's climate or other lack of food for them, but we're finding the sucker runs in our rivers aren't what they used to be.
Wow.
So you can probably remember a time when you could go out in early spring and walk across the stream on suckers' backs, right?
Absolutely.
We definitely don't see that anymore. We try to track it as much as we can. It's not when we're doing our fishing, but when we're out doing water quality sampling, we're looking for suckers to see when their spawn starts to happen. So it can be a number of things that has affected them, but one of them could be gobies. And the gobies eating their eggs in the spring, right, as the food source. Because gobies still do that, right? As many viewers know, and how are they sort of, in the beginning, we thought that was the worst part about them, was they were eating the eggs of other fish.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
So, and that makes sense, because correct me if I'm wrong, but suckers are the first to lay their eggs. A lot of them under ice and all that stuff. They're starting to spawn. That would make sense why we wouldn't see that same effect on other predator fish like smallmouth bass, for example, because otherwise they would be a perfect candidate to have their eggs decimated by gobies. But if the gobies up early, doing its thing to all of the nutritious sucker eggs, by the time the smallmouth spawn, it's kind of passé to them, maybe. That would make sense, right?
And there's enough other food around because the water warmed up, right? Yeah,
right.
That's possible. And that's the stuff, it's really hard to study that, right?
Wow.
So, but that there's some theory around that the suckers aren't doing so well because of that.
Interesting. How about the walleye? Any data on it?
I haven't seen a walleye in forever, and that's just because, honestly, we're not looking for them in our stream work. That is definitely a question for M&R. So
the Thames used to be, when I was growing up, I mean, the Thames was walleye capital of planet Earth, because there was a period of time early in the year where they would literally have their backs out of the water in the Thames heading up to spawn. That we lost, oh gosh, I'm going to say 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You just don't see that run anymore up in that area.
Yeah, and in the Talbot in Lake Simcoe, we used to have a big run up the Talbot.
Yep.
I don't know, honestly. Not that it's just I haven't been out there looking in the spring, early spring for them, so I haven't been out there. But M&R used to do a lot of work in there to have the other anglers come out and help out and do surveys, like spotlighting them in the evenings and stuff. I don't know the status of them in Lake Simcoe.
Okay. Fascinating stuff. I don't think we get enough of the scientific community out talking to the general public at large about the stuff that you guys do. Like, there's such a shroud of mystery surrounding the whole scientific community in this business that anytime we have an opportunity to have folks on like yourself, just to turn that spotlight on a little bit and let us know what you guys are doing, I think it goes a long way in the fishing world for sure.
Yeah, no, and I'm a fisherman myself, and knowing a little bit helps you a lot in your boat.
Oh, does it ever? And you've given me 2 or 3 things to work on in terms of goby presentation. Let me tell you. Rob, really appreciate you taking the time and coming out today and chatting with the folks. Keep up the good work. And if you have any breakthroughs, don't just wait for us to get a hold of you. If you have any breakthroughs in not just goby, but anything that you're working on, especially on the Lake Simcoe area, by all means, pop on over and we'll get it back out.
Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. Rob Wilson, aquatic ecologist at the Lake Simcoe Regional Region Conservation Authority, the LSRCA, otherwise known. Anything that in that conversation that would not have fascinated you, if you're a smallmouth bass angler that spends any amount of time on Lake Simcoe, then you weren't paying attention, because there's a few things there that came to light. Certainly I'm going to start looking into it for sure. But we've known about it. I mean, at one point, and I was going to ask Rob, and I forgot, at one point, crayfish played a major role in the smallmouth bass fishery on Lake Simcoe. And then it almost seemed that and now we know why, but over a course of about 5 or 6 years, it became less important to the smallmouth bass. I'm talking about crayfish. And their interest had waned somewhat. And not many folks had picked up on what it was. The ones that were picking up on it, you probably have heard their names in the who's who of tournament fishing in Southern Ontario, because they made a career out of it on Lake Simcoe. A lot of them did because they had made that switch from a crayfish-based presentation to a goby presentation. And I could also talk about the St. Lawrence, because I think next to Lake Simcoe, I don't think there's any piece of water anywhere in Canada that we have seen the obvious shift from, in terms of prey, from crustaceans to gobies than the St. Lawrence River for smallmouth bass. And I got to tell you, it's quadruple. It's one of the fisheries that has actually improved, I think, in the last 20 years. Both Simcoe and the St. Lawrence for bass fishermen has improved tenfold over that period of time. And you can't say that about a whole lot of waterways in the world, let alone here in Canada. But those two specifically, the smallmouth bass have flourished. More of them and bigger. They're getting bigger and bigger. And it has to do with the goby. There you go. I got that out of my system. We were looking to have Rob on here for a long, I would think, ever since we first heard of him, to see if he could clear up something for us. All right, Dean, what do we got? Any last minute things I need to know?
We do have a contest on, our biggest of the year.
No.
We have the LiveScope still up there. This episode, by the time it comes out, this contest is a few weeks old, but it's on until Christmas. So it'll be drawn right in time.
And what do folks have to do for this one?
You just go to our website, fishandcanada.com, click the contest button, and then we'll ask for your email, and that's about it. Once you're signed up, you can head back every day and do different things, and you'll get new bonus entries. And every episode, we do give away a bonus code. Normally, Nick is here to give his input on what it should be, but I think we could probably handle that.
I would think we should make it goby.
I think goby makes a lot of sense.
I think we should make it goby. So,
yeah.
Goby is your bonus code for both the contest and the store?
Yep.
Would that be safe and saying?
Yep, we'll use it for both.
So Goby, go to either one of those platforms, either the contest or the store, Fishing Canada store, and enter where it says bonus code, enter the word Goby.
All capitals, Goby.
Why is that important, by the way? Somebody asked me that.
It's a dated thing of how we input the codes where it has to be exact. It's really annoying. I feel like it needs to be updated, but as of right now, we still do need the exact wording. Because
a lot of folks are saying, hey, I went there and put it in and then nothing happened. And then when you say, well, did you make it capital? You say, no.
Well, I mean, it's a free LiveScope. You got to do a little bit of work.
I know, but still, like, you don't want to make it hard for folks, right? You just want to... No?
I don't know. There needs to be some sort of challenge to it.
All right. Well, there's a skill testing challenge.
Yep.
Is that you must remember to make it all capitals for either one of those. Other contests may be ongoing as well at the same time when you go to the contest part of the website. Remember, you can enter all of them. Any contest that's on our site, you can enter them every single day.
Including if you live in Quebec. Doesn't even matter anymore. Doesn't even matter anymore.
Let's not forget those great folks in Quebec that can finally, it's, you know what? It's like the shackles were removed from them.
Yeah.
Right? They've been living with these shackles.
Yep.
All these years, not being able to enter into most contests that were outside of the province of Quebec. Well, guess what, folks? It's like the Berlin Wall came down. Like, you can now get into all these wonderful opportunities that everybody else has been doing for years. So I want to see somebody from Quebec win this baby here. Is that maybe favoriting?
I took a look before the podcast, and there are quite a few people from Quebec entering. So
there you go.
The word's getting out.
There you go. Keep it up. All right, that are it. On behalf of the whole team, which today is Dean Taylor and myself, I'm Angelo Viola. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time. This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio is brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada. Rent the boat, own the memories. JMB Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Silver Wax, absolute care for everything you drive.